"You're back." 2 words. That's all she said. But the way she said them made my skin crawl. I was standing in the doorway of room 807 at one of Toronto's oldest hotels. My suitcase was still in my hand. I hadn't even had time to take off my coat. And this maid, this old woman with trembling hands and terrified eyes. She was looking at me like I had just crawled out of a grave. "Excuse me? I just checked in 5 minutes ago." She wasn't listening. She shoved a folded piece of paper into my hands and whispered something that didn't make any sense. "The last guest in this room had your face. Exactly your face. She left this for the person who would eventually come for it." Then she disappeared down the hallway before I could ask a single question. I stood there holding that yellowed paper, feeling like the floor had just shifted underneath my feet. My name is Julianne. I fix broken things for a living. Old paintings, cracked antiques, faded photographs. But what I found in that hotel room, it broke something inside me that I'm still trying to piece back together. If you've ever had that feeling that your family is hiding something huge from you, hit subscribe right now, because this story is about to mess with your head. Let me give you some context. I grew up in Vermont. Small town, quiet life. Just me and my mother, Catherine. She raised me alone after my father supposedly died in a car accident before I was born. I never questioned it. I had no reason to. According to my mom, we moved to Vermont from London when I was 3. Simple story. Nothing complicated. I was in Toronto for work. A gallery opening. Big deal for my career as a restoration artist. I had never been to Canada before. At least that's what I believed. The hotel was called the Sovereign, one of those grand old buildings that smells like history and money. I had booked room 807 because it had a view of the city and I wanted to treat myself. What I got instead was a mystery that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my own life. After the maid ran off, I unfolded the paper she had given me. Inside was a Polaroid photograph, and the woman in that photo was me. Not someone who looked similar. Not a distant relative. Me. Same mole near my left eye. Same weird curl in my hair at the temples. Same exact face staring back at me from a picture I had never taken. But here's the thing that made my blood run cold. She was older than me. Maybe late 20s. Wearing a dress I had never owned. Standing in front of a lighthouse I had never seen. And written on the back in handwriting that looked exactly like mine were the words, Toronto 2003. The answers are in the walls. In 2003, I was 7 years old. How could there be a photo of me as an adult from 20 years ago? I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of that hotel bed, turning the photograph over and over in my hands, trying to make it make sense, trying to find some logical explanation. A prank. That's what my brain kept telling me. Someone is messing with you. It's a weird hotel tradition. A marketing stunt. Something. But the maid's face. The terror in her eyes. That wasn't acting. The next morning, I went down to the front desk and asked to speak with the manager. Told him I was an art historian doing research on the building's history. Slipped him some cash. Turned on the charm. He gave me access to the hotel archives. I spent 6 hours going through guest logs. Digital records first. Then the older paper ones stored in boxes in the basement, looking for any mention of room 807. And then I found something that made my hands go numb. A guest registration from 2003. Room 807. Booked for 3 months straight. The name on the register was Julianne Vance. My name. But I was 7 years old in 2003. I couldn't have checked into a hotel. I looked at the signature, and my heart stopped. It wasn't my handwriting, but I recognized it immediately. It was my mother's. I tried calling her. She didn't pick up. I tried again. Voicemail. I left a message. Mom, I found something at this hotel. Something with my name on it from 2003. You need to call me back right now. She didn't call back. I waited 2 hours. 3 hours. Nothing. That's when I knew something was very wrong. My mother always answered her phone. Always. She was the most anxious, overprotective person I had ever known. If I called twice, she would assume I was dying in a ditch somewhere. But now, radio silence. I went back to the archives, kept digging. If my mother had stayed in this room for 3 months using my name, there had to be more evidence, more traces, something. That's when I found the second box, maintenance records from 2003. And in those records was a work order for room 807, repair request. Guest reports strange noise coming from behind bathroom wall. Maintenance inspected. Found hollow space behind tiles. Space was empty. No action taken. The answers are in the walls. I went back up to room 807, locked the door behind me, went into the bathroom, started knocking on the tiles, listening for a hollow sound. It took me 20 minutes, but I found it. A section of wall near the floor that sounded different from the rest. I used a nail file to pry the tiles loose. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip anything. Behind the tiles was a small hollow space, and inside that space was a metal box about the size of a shoebox, covered in dust, sealed with tape that had yellowed with age. I pulled it out, sat down on the bathroom floor, and opened it. Inside were documents, dozens of them, birth certificates, medical records, photographs, newspaper clippings. And as I started reading through them, my entire understanding of my life collapsed like a house of cards. Here's what was in that box. A birth certificate for a baby girl named Julianne Vance, born in Toronto in 1996. A second birth certificate for a different baby girl, also named Julianne Vance, also born in 1996, but in London. Medical records showing that the Toronto Julianne had a small birthmark on her left hip. A heart-shaped mark. I have that birthmark. Newspaper clippings from 1997. A house fire in Toronto. 2 people dead. A woman named Margaret Vance and her infant daughter Julianne. Bodies burned beyond recognition. A photograph of a woman I had never seen before holding a baby. On the back it said, Margaret and Julianne, Toronto, 1996. And at the very bottom of the box, a letter, handwritten, addressed to whoever finds this. I read that letter 3 times before the words actually sank in. It was written by someone named Catherine, my mother's name, and it explained everything. Catherine and Margaret were sisters. They both had daughters the same year, both named Julianne after their grandmother. Margaret lived in Toronto with her husband. Catherine lived in London as a single mother. In 1997, there was a fire at Margaret's house. Margaret and her husband died, but baby Julianne survived. She was pulled from the wreckage by firefighters. Catherine flew to Toronto for the funeral. She was supposed to take her niece back to London, raise her alongside her own daughter. But that's not what happened. Catherine's daughter, the London Julianne, had died 3 weeks earlier. Sudden infant death syndrome. Catherine hadn't told anyone. She was too consumed by grief, too broken to admit that her baby was gone. So when she got to Toronto, when she held her sister's surviving child, something inside her snapped. She took baby Julianne back to London, but not as her niece, as her daughter. She used the death of her own child to create a new identity, buried the London birth certificate, pretended the Toronto Julianne was actually the London Julianne. And then she disappeared, moved to America, started over, raised me as if I had always been hers. The letter ended with one line. "I'm sorry, I know this was wrong, but I couldn't lose another child, even if she wasn't really mine." I sat on that bathroom floor for a long time. The woman who raised me, the woman I called Mom, she wasn't my mother. She was my aunt. My real mother died in a fire when I was a baby. My real father, too. I had living relatives somewhere. A whole family tree that had been cut off and hidden from me for 27 years. The photos in that box, the newspaper clippings, the birth certificates. They were all evidence of a life I should have lived. A life that was stolen from me before I could even form memories. I flew back to Vermont 3 days later. I didn't call ahead. I just showed up at my mother's house, at Catherine's house, with the metal box in my hands. She was in the kitchen when I walked in. She turned around and saw my face, saw what I was carrying, and she knew. She didn't try to lie. She didn't try to explain. She just sat down at the kitchen table and started crying. I sat down across from her, put the box between us, and said 4 words, "Tell me everything." She talked for 3 hours. She told me about her sister Margaret, about how close they were, about how excited they both were to have babies the same year. She told me about the night her own daughter died, how she found her in the crib, not breathing, how something inside her broke so completely she couldn't even call for help. She just sat there holding a dead baby until the sun came up. She told me about the fire, about flying to Toronto in a fog of grief, about holding me for the first time and feeling something click into place, like I was meant to be hers, like the universe was giving her a second chance. She told me about the guilt, the paranoia, the constant fear that someone would find out. That's why she never let me go to sleepovers, why she always had to know where I was, why she never talked about the past. She wasn't protecting me from something. She was protecting herself from losing me. I wish I could tell you I forgave her immediately. That would make for a nicer story, a cleaner ending, but that's not what happened. I was angry. So angry I couldn't even look at her. This woman had stolen me. She had let my real family believe I was dead. She had built my entire life on a lie. I left that night, drove to a motel, sat in the parking lot, and screamed into my steering wheel until my throat was raw. It took me 2 years to find them. My real family, the Vances, Margaret's side. There was a grandmother still alive. My real grandmother. She was 83 years old and living in a nursing home in Ottawa. When I walked into her room and told her who I was, she started shaking so hard the nurses came running. She thought I was dead. For 27 years, she had believed her granddaughter died in that fire with her daughter and son-in-law. She had visited a grave with my name on it every year on my birthday. We sat together for hours. She showed me photos of my mother, my real mother, Margaret. She had my eyes, my smile, the same stubborn set to her jaw. I have cousins too. Margaret had a brother who lives in Vancouver. He has 3 kids, my age. We've met twice now. It's awkward and strange and wonderful all at the same time. And Catherine, I didn't speak to her for 18 months. But here's the thing about anger. It burns hot, but it doesn't burn forever. She did a terrible thing. She stole me from my family. She let people grieve for a child who wasn't dead. She built 27 years of lies on top of her sister's grave. But she also raised me, fed me, stayed up with me when I was sick, helped me with homework, drove me to college, cried at my graduation. The woman who kidnapped me is also the woman who loved me more than anyone else in the world. I don't know how to reconcile those two things. I'm not sure I ever will. We talk now, occasionally, short phone calls, careful conversations, She's in therapy. So am I. We're both trying to figure out how to move forward when the past is this heavy. I still have the metal box. I keep it in my closet. Sometimes I take it out and look through the documents, the birth certificates, the photographs, the letter, evidence of a life that was supposed to be mine. A different version of Julianne Vance, who would have grown up in Toronto with her parents and her grandmother and cousins who knew her name. That version of me doesn't exist. She died in a story that Catherine made up, a convenient fiction that let one grieving woman replace what she had lost. But I exist, this version. The one raised in Vermont by an aunt who called herself Mother. The one who fixes broken things for a living. Maybe that's not an accident. Maybe I was always meant to understand that some things can be repaired, and some things can only be accepted as they are. So here's what I learned from all of this. The truth doesn't care about your timeline. You can bury it for 20 years, 30 years, an entire lifetime. But it will always find a way to surface, through a photograph left in a hotel room, through documents hidden behind bathroom tiles, through a maid who remembers a face she saw decades ago. The people who keep secrets think they're protecting someone. Maybe themselves. Maybe the people they love. But secrets don't protect. They just delay the inevitable. And when the truth finally comes out, and it always does, the damage is so much worse than it would have been if someone had just been honest from the beginning. I lost 27 years of knowing my real family. My grandmother lost 27 years of knowing her granddaughter was alive, all because one woman was too afraid to face her grief honestly. Don't let fear make your decisions for you. Don't let pain turn you into someone who hides from the truth. And if you ever find yourself holding a secret that could change someone's life, let it go. The truth might hurt, but lies leave scars that never fully heal. If this story hit close to home, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me about a family secret that changed everything. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Hit that button, because there are more stories coming. Until next time, stay honest, stay brave, and never stop looking for the truth, even when it's hiding in the walls.